host, Shaina Smith, welcoming you to the National Boardroom. This evening, we're going to be discussing or continuing our discussion about domestic violence, and I have some guests with me here tonight that will be giving us more information about the new legislation that was recently enacted. Vigilate Dialogues is sponsored by Smith & Associates and Clover's Shoe Store, and we'll take a quick commercial break and get a word from our sponsors and be right back. Welcome back. You're tuned into the Vigilate Dialogues. I am your host, Shaina Smith, welcoming you to the National Boardroom. Tonight's topic will be continuing our conversation about domestic violence, and with me I have some very knowledgeable persons who will be discussing the new legislation that was enacted on October 31st. As you know, October was celebrated as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So with me this evening, I have Miss Lorolie Gender Affairs Coordinator, and alongside of her, Miss Kamica Forbes, Associate at Forbes & Here. Good evening, ladies.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here with us. We received a lot of good feedback as far as persons who weren't aware of a lot of the information that the persons that we had on. I'd like to say thank you again to Ms. Chauncey Klein, Stacy Stout, Shonda Jeffers, and Dr. Sylvia Simmons for coming on and talking to us more about this very important issue in our community. And, you know, information is always a powerful thing when we put it into practice. So it's very key, I think, that we're here tonight to talk about what this legislation represents for us as a community and for individuals, you know, that may be going through situations and how they can better protect themselves. So let's start up at the top, I guess, to kind of just to lay the foundation again. When we talk about domestic violence, what are we talking about?
We're actually talking about abuse or a relationship where there's power and control. Someone wants to have control over the other in the relationship. And notice I'm not using a gender here because it happens to both males and females. Mm-hmm. So once you have that power and control scenario in a relationship, it usually constitutes abuse or leads up to abuse.
Abuse, okay. And they laid out, you know, talking about the different cycle where there will be, you know, there will be abuse. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be mental, it could be sexual. So there are different forms of it. And then there's that cycle of, okay, it happens, and then he apologizes or she apologizes, and then it keeps going on until it escalates, you know, to get very bad. So, the Domestic Violence Act of 2011 that was enacted on October 31st. Tell us some more in terms of what is that, or what is it supposed to do?
That piece of legislation was actually assented to October 3rd, 2011. Mm-hmm. But the ministry wanted to have a sensitization process where the public was informed of what this new act is about, because it includes so many areas that were not previously included. Mm-hmm. The actual draft form of the act was taken from the OECS model legislation, mm-hmm. Which all the Caribbean islands are now making their laws to be at that standard or to comply with that.
Okay, so that was like the template that was used.
Exactly.
Okay.
And what happened on October 3rd was the ascension, but then we had to publicize and get the public informed mm-hmm. of all that, the changes that were in the actual document. In so doing, we started visiting the churches and schools and sister islands.
Yes, you had a very busy month.
I really did, but it was something that needed to be done because the public really needs to know. Okay.
So what kind of feedback did you get? Because you really covered the gamut as far as when I saw the schedule. It was schools, it was churches, you had a conference, you know, a lot of different activities involving, you know, publics in terms of getting that information out there. How was the feedback received?
It was really enlightening. Mm-hmm. Usually when we go out and we're thinking we're doing education forums, mm-hmm. it ends up being therapeutic forums because everybody just wants to talk about the various issues that they see or they want to lay on the table and see, well, how to deal with it, mm-hmm. because there are a lot of new things that were included which people weren't too sure as to how to deal with them, such as mm-hmm. electronic emailing. Mm-hmm. That is something that was not covered, mm-hmm. and it's not even covered in the OECS models. It was actually our police officers and the committee that sat to discuss this document or this legislation that decided they wanted that included because it's something that they're seeing a rise in. Yes. And usually when they're taking cases to court, these electronic emails are printed and taken before the court. So they figured if we're seeing this, we're on the front line, then this needs to be addressed.
Yeah, this is the reality on the ground.
This is the reality, so we need to address it.
Okay, great. All right, so you said it was enacted earlier in the month of October.
October 3rd, 2011, so it took us a whole year to get it. It was assented to, October 3rd, 2011, so it took us a year to get the public informed and to get it enacted.
And all the different stakeholders, making sure everybody has been trained on it and knows how it
and
applies.
that's why Ms. Forbes is here tonight, because she's part of that team that goes out and trains the public. So we have persons from social development, the police, family support network, the legal fraternity. And, you know, it's really been an enlightening experience, because when these persons go out, you have the experts right there that you can speak to. So if you're getting a complaint about police, it can be addressed right there. If you're getting a complaint about social development, it can be addressed right there. And persons have been quite open, which was really surprising to us, because we thought, you know, we would go in and just say what we needed to say and meeting done. But sometimes it would go till minutes to 11 and we would have to call it quits. Yeah. So it was really an experience I didn't expect.
Okay. But it was well received by the public.
Well received by the public.
All right, great. All right, so what does the Act do in a nutshell? And did it have one before that?
Yes, it did. It had the Domestic Violence Summary Proceedings, 1996. Okay. Which was an act. I think that was a real jump for us, because I remember when I came home in 1992, and there were cases of domestic violence at social development. There was a legislation it was handled under the criminal code, which stated that there's a rule of thumb where a man was allowed to hit his spouse with nothing bigger than his thumb. That was actually in the law books. Really? So when we got the Domestic Violence Act 1996, I was like, woohoo! You know?
There has been progress. Okay.
There has been progress, but we still did not encapsulate everything that needed to be dealt with in domestic violence, because throughout the years we see that there's more than just physical. There's the emotional, psychological, there's the economic, there's the sexual abuse, and even now in the criminal code, our act states that if a woman is assaulted by her husband sexually, if she's raped by her husband, it's sexual assault, not rape. So we still don't have that covered in the law, which is something that should raise red flags for married couples.
So that would be one of those future amendments
that would need to be looked at. That has to be something that definitely needs to be looked at.
Okay. All right, so so in a nutshell, what does it do? Now that we know that it is an upgrade, or it's updated from 1996, what does it do?
Okay, I'm going to give you the definition, because I think that's the best way for us to understand what it is the Act includes. Okay. So domestic violence means any controlling or abusive behavior that harms or may harm the health, safety, or well-being of a person or any child, and includes but is not limited to the following: physical abuse or threats of physical abuse, sexual abuse or threats of sexual abuse, emotional, verbal, or psychological abuse, economic abuse, intimidation, harassment, stalking, damage to or destruction of property, entry into the applicant's residence without consent where the parties do not share the same residence, and electronic emailing. Okay.
So that defines, that's the definition that they have of domestic violence in the Act. Yes. Essentially. Okay. And that is very broad.
Very broad.
Okay. In the press release I was reading, where it talked about the Act gives police officers the duty to inform both victim and the perpetrator of their rights. Kamica, can you tell us a little bit about, in terms of what are some of the rights now that's in there that define both sides of it?
Well, I mean, if you are a person affected by domestic violence, and I say that in lieu of using the term victim, because I think it's something that, we need to allow persons who do go through these experiences to break themselves free of. Okay. So if you are in a situation where you are affected by domestic violence, your right is to get protection, immediate protection from the police. Okay. And there is a list of rights in the Act that is set out. I cannot tell you right now from the top of my head, but I'm happy to go to it and discuss it with you. And those would include the right to get assistance from the police, and that's not just in returning to your property return to your home to get property if the person has taken something from you. And that is also the right to get medical treatment. And you're also entitled to get a protection order.
Okay.
And that's what the act provides for.
Okay.
In terms of getting a protection order, I know this is a big issue because since the act has come into force, because we've changed the venue now.
Okay.
Instead of cases being heard in the magistrate's court, they're now being heard by the high court.
Okay.
And that gives the court obviously a wider range in terms of their powers upon breach and the sentences which can be handed down on breach.
Okay.
That's also a significant change.
Okay.
Before
you go any further, for those of us who are not legalese, what do we say? Breach and on breach. What's that, real quick?
Let's say if you have a protection order made in your favor and it prevents someone from coming within 10 feet of you, and they now come within 5 feet of you, if they come to in direct contact with you, they're now in breach of that order.
Okay.
And that breach is an offense in and of itself that can be taken to the court.
Okay.
Once they are found to be by the court in breach of that order, we're looking at sentences which are in the range of up to $5,000 and or 3 months imprisonment.
Okay.
That's the first offense.
Okay.
And it climbs steadily after that.
So there's some very stiff penalties now included.
Stiff penalties.
Okay.
So, I mean, at the top range, just to give you an idea, we're looking at up to 5 years imprisonment.
Okay, for breaching a protection order.
A protection order. No matter how simple you might think the offense is, calling somebody that's unwarranted, if there's a protection order in place, you need to respect it.
Respect it, yeah. Because then there are legal consequences.
There are legal consequences, which brings me to another point. If it is that you find yourself on the wrong side of a protection order, because it could happen to any of us.
Yeah.
And you're not in agreement with it, you're opposed, you have the right, like in any other case, to file an appeal.
Okay.
And that appeal would be to the Court of Appeal, but you must do so within 28 days of the order being made against you.
Okay, so what do I do to take a protection order? I say I want to take a protection order against you.
Yes.
So do I have to present evidence as far as why I want to take out the order? Okay, so walk us through that process, that application process.
Well, like we said, it's going to be done through the high courts, which means that instead of going to the magistrate's court, you have to go to the high court registry. And that is located on Main Street above the old post office.
Okay.
At the registry, you need to fill out what they call an affidavit, which is a sworn statement. Your affidavit needs to specify the circumstances which you're complaining of, all the behavior, anything that has happened which you think entitles you to a protection order.
Okay.
Note it down carefully. Also, in your affidavit, if it is that person has access to weapons, or you think that they may get access to weapons, you need to specify that in the order, in the application.
As far as whether you think they're a danger or a threat to your life. Okay.
So you have the affidavit which sets out your case, and also there's a standard notice that you'd get assistance from the court in terms of filling that out. There'll be staff there. You can speak with the court administrator who will help you to fill those documents out.
Okay.
Additionally, in your application, you need to specify also the police station that you're likely to report any breach of an order to.
Okay.
This is very important because if you specify the police station, then a copy of that order will be sent to the station.
Okay. So that they would have a record.
They would have, and then therefore when you come to complain about the breach, protection can be offered almost immediately.
Okay.
And on our visits, I've been telling persons that if you find that you reported that, you probably report to Road Town, and you find yourself in King Garden Bay, whether you're at the music fest or something, you don't have to say, okay, well, I have to head back to town to report the breach.
Okay.
Go to King Garden Bay, just say to them, there is an order at the Road Town station, and I need protection.
Okay. And then they would call
they'll
and
liaise
follow up with them. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad we're getting this information out because it's very important. Because when you're in emergency cases, and you don't really think about, you don't think. Who should I call? What should I do? So getting this information out beforehand and giving persons opportunity to ask questions now about things like, what's the process? Where do I go? So I wouldn't go to the magistrate's court because that's where, it's been in the past. But you go in the correct places. All right, well, let's take a quick commercial break and get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back to talk more about this important piece of legislation and get a word from our sponsors. Thank you, ladies, for being here this evening. All right, while we were on the commercial break, I know there's something that we need to make sure we also communicate about the application process, and that is, Ms. Connor.
That is that there are certain persons that can apply on behalf of someone. For instance, if there are children in that home and they are being affected, of course they will be affected by the domestic violence because they are the second-hand victims of domestic violence. Then an older sibling can report, a grandparent, and all reports should be made to social development. Where children are concerned, also there's an obligation for teachers or educators, medical practitioners, counselors, preachers, to report to social development that these children are in
danger,
domestic disputes.
All right, well, great. So that way too, as a minor, that they're able to do that. Is it also possible, say for example, someone can report on behalf of an adult? Is there any scenarios where that maybe somebody from social development, if I went and reported a case, that they can do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's particularly so where the person is, let's say, disabled, or if it's an elderly person, a person who's considered to be a dependent. Where adults are concerned, other persons can report on their behalf. And you can do that to social development, or you can make an application yourself on their behalf. There is provision in the law for you to do that.
To be able to do that.
Yeah, where adults are concerned.
All right. Let's touch on court orders and sanctions. What is that, and how does that work?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, well, the one we talked about the sanctions increasing. There's an increasing scale for sanctions, but in terms of the court orders, presently under the Act, there's only one order that's available, and that would be the protection order. That's the order we've been speaking about. Persons know it commonly as a restraining order, but it does more than just restrain persons from accessing you. Conditions can be attached to a protection order, and those are conditions requiring them to whether pay money to you or continue paying a rent, paying rent, mortgages, or also it can ask a person to vacate the home or vacate part of the home. I know I need to stop here because it doesn't necessarily give you the right to own the property. It's not, it doesn't change the property rights at all.
It's just about residence.
It's about residence and occupation. And it can also require the accused to attend counseling. I know Ms. Connor will probably talk more about the programs that we have available currently in the territory and what we're seeking to develop in the near future. And also just emergency relief, because persons who are in these situations find that, you know, they might have been abused by the breadwinner in the home, and they are generally in need of assistance and urgently. So there is provision within the Act for those conditions to be attached to a protection order. And the protection order basically, you know, when we talk about restraining, the locations we're thinking about is your work environment, your school, places that you're known to frequent. The order can specify where the applicant is, where the accused cannot interfere with you.
All right, so that would be basically on a case-by-case basis.
It would be.
It would be determined what needs to be included and what different areas would need to be addressed. Because I think that even when you think about something like they stop paying rent, and then you end up becoming homeless on top of, you know, the situation you're already in.
You're victimized twice.
Yeah, so those are things that are very key. I think that, you know, it's critical that those things are covered, because we don't think about them. We tend to think about just the immediate. But then long term, while we're waiting on these things to be resolved, now, you know, another situation can develop because of the person's behavior.
That's very true. I mean, even what's important is that a breach of a condition, so a failure to pay the maintenance on time, it works the same as if you actually breached the order itself. So it will attract those fines that we were talking about earlier. Or the term of imprisonment as well. As far as the protection order, obviously it's generally going to be granted in an emergency basis, and there may not be enough time to give the accused notice to appear before the judge. I'm sorry. I'm still in the
we switched.
I'm still in
different venue. Right. So we're in the high court.
Yes, it may not be enough time to give them notice to appear before the court. So they'll grant what is called an interim order, and that will be in place until the accused can be properly served.
So you're saying the order doesn't go into immediate effect They're given the opportunity to appeal it, you were saying?
No, it goes in, it's an immediate effect, but obviously in the interest of justice, we want them to have an opportunity to come to court and defend.
Okay.
Defend the application.
Okay.
So it's an immediate effect until the person comes and the accused comes and defends the application, and then it will be determined whether a longer term protection or needs to be granted. Okay. And I say longer term because it's not indefinite.
Okay.
It
lasts a period of time.
Yes, it will last up to 3 years. Okay. So I encourage persons, if you know you need a protection order beyond the 3 years currently, you need to make sure before the last day on the 2nd year, make another application for an extension. Okay. Yeah. You have to be vigilant. Okay. With that.
So do you have a maximum amount of times that it can extend it, or? No. Okay.
No, there's no limit on the amount of protection that you can get.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because it may have to go for quite a period of time. Some cases.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So Ms. Connor, what else would you like to share with us about the Act?
The role of the police.
Okay.
The police, as previously stated, have to inform victims and perpetrators of their rights. The police also has an internal policy that they developed to specifically make sure they're in alignment with the new Domestic Violence Act, which one of the big things that I think everybody needs to know about is it's mandated that the police, or it's mandating police officers when they go into domestic violence situations to arrest the aggressor. Okay. Whether it's male or female, the aggressor should be taken in for questioning, or they can hold that person for 24 hours as a cool-off period. And I think that is very important for people to know. So police can no longer say, well, that's a personal matter, you have to deal with that. If that is the case, I know the Family and Juvenile Unit, and above all, the police commissioner takes that very seriously. You get a badge number, you get a name, and you report what was said to you. Yes. Okay. So I think it's important for people to know their rights. When you want relief from a situation and you call the authorities that be, which is the police in this situation, you expect action, and that is what the police is offering at this point with their domestic violence policy internal. Okay, so this is something that they developed as a supplement to this? Yes. Okay. Which I think was a great initiative on their part. Okay.
So in terms of, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things we talked about last time was about the misperceptions or even the attitude that persons have had towards domestic violence in the past, inclusive of the persons who are to enforce the laws, and how that is starting to shift and how it's changed. And what are some of the other things too that you see needs to be changed, as far as whether it's the stakeholder, government stakeholders, or even the public, as far as how we view domestic violence and what we need to be doing about it?
I don't think the society is going to change overnight, because this is ingrained in us. It's something, I told you earlier about the rule of thumb. I mean, this was something that was actually accepted in our community. And I think the month of activity probably brought a little crack in the whole scheme of things. But when you look at the bigger picture, this is going to take years to reprogram the way we think about relationships. And it's amazing the way some churches use the verse on submission. Women are to be submissive unto their husbands. I totally agree with that statement. But it comes with conditions. It tells a man specifically how to treat his wife for her to be submissive. So if he's not treating her as Christ loved the church, that's unto the point of death. Then how can she be submissive to someone that is mistreating her? It does not give way for that. And I think that's the premise on which we stand, and that premise needs to be totally...
As far as the justification that was given.
Oh, yes. The justification is always, a woman needs to be submissive to her husband. I totally agree with that, but there are conditions. And if you have a man that loves you as Christ loved the church to the point of death, why wouldn't you be submissive? But there's a give and take. And that's why we were stressing healthy relationships during the month. And also it's important for our listeners to know that there are services offered for victims. Well, I know Kamica doesn't like saying victims. Persons of interest.
Persons affected.
Persons affected.
It includes everyone.
She's saying it includes everyone, which is true. It does include the children. But social development offers several opportunities for victims or persons affected to be assisted. For instance, they have food grants. They're the ones that's going to look out for the well-being of a child.
Okay.
And it's important to state that those persons who are obligated to make reports of children who are in abusive homes and don't make it, the fine can be up to $10,000
for non-reporting.
For not reporting.
Wow.
And I think that's really, really important for people to understand that this is a serious matter.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy that our legislators, past and present, are pushing this issue because it's something that needs to be looked at. But as I previously stated, because we are a society that believes that it's all right to haul up your woman every so often, it's all right.
It became acceptable, and that was one of the things we talked about last time too, as far as, you know, we're not talking about, you know, every once in a while you may have an argument with your significant other. That, because it happens, you know, people, you know, we get on each other's nerves sometimes. But, you know, looking for the trends, looking for things that are basically unacceptable or unhealthy behaviors and attitudes are those things that we are talking about. So it's not that, you know, as it used to be termed as you're getting in people's business, but that this is something that for us as a community that we have to address, and more so especially for our children's sake.
It's
because
amazing.
whatever they see, they're going to go and repeat and pattern. And, you know, if you're teaching them violence at home, they're going to go out and they're going to grow and think that that is what is acceptable and what's normal. So it's really key.
It's interesting you say that, because when we went into the schools, we found out that there are cases of domestic violence with peers. You know, they're seeing each other, abusing each other within the schools. And it's like, it's going to start earlier and earlier because that's what they're seeing. It's a learned behavior. It's the way they were socialized. So they didn't learn the proper coping skills, communication skills.
How do you deal with conflict? You know, you have a disagreement. How do you address that? And it not be in a negative way, essentially. So that is very key.
So we have to go re-socialize our children. And I stress during the course of the month, it's going to happen one home at a time, because we can't just go blanket everybody, because everybody has their own issues. So we have to remember this and try to deal with each situation individually and try to get to the core of the problem, because sometimes it might be something that just needs a little tweaking. And that's why we have the Partnership for Peace program. This program is usually done through the courts, where a perpetrator would be sent, usually male because it's a male program. It's a 16-week program that's psychoeducational, that basically holds the perpetrator for being accountable for his actions. He is the one that took his hand, or he's the one that verbally abused someone or assaulted someone. And the court makes him go through this process of 16 weeks of counseling. And so far, I must say the program has been pretty successful. We've done
it's called what? Partnership for Peace?
Partnership for Peace. Yes. And the persons who have gone through that program have not been before the court that we know of, because we have to check on them periodically to see. But the program only started in 2010, so I think it's a good thing for the 2 years that it's been running. It's been doing pretty good. You know, the previous gender affairs coordinator, Miss Hackett, she's the one that actually started that whole process.
And initiated back
she initiated it way back then, and it's been going, you know, strong. And I think that is a legacy that she has left. But the problem with this program is there's not a complementing program
for women.
For women. So while they're learning how to change their behaviors, they're going back home to the same old. And these women are not learning how to cope, how to communicate. And the program actually gets men to go back into their very childhood to see where their habits were formulated. To the root of the problem. So if they're going through all this therapy and then they go home to the same situation, we have a problem. And you know, I personally think for the coming year, that's something that really needs to be started.
Priority. Well, definitely, because that was also one of the things that came out of the last conversation, as far as we can't just have the conversation about domestic violence and building awareness once a year. It has to be something that is ongoing, continuous.
Exactly.
And it not just be, focusing again about the negative aspect or the reaction, but we have to be proactive. As far as, again, it's about healthy relationships and learning how to function in healthy relationships.
There's even another program that I heard about through UN Women, who actually help us sponsor it and get the Partnership for Peace program, better known as PFP.
Okay.
They have a youth program, a youth arm.
Mm-hmm.
And during one of our earlier sensitizations at the Apostolic Faith,
Mm-hmm.
Pastor Michael Anthony actually said he wants to sponsor that program.
Mm-hmm.
It's for youths who have troubled past,
Mm-hmm.
who come from abusive home, who might be getting in trouble with the law,
Mm-hmm.
ages 15 to 25.
Okay.
And I think that's a prime age for us to get in there and work with those youths. But there actually are some areas of the program that needs to be tweaked, because it's a 3-day program, but it's 15 modules.
Okay. Very intense.
Yeah, and these are young people.
Yeah.
So I think, a team
Yeah.
of professionals need to sit down and
And break it down a bit.
break
yeah.
it down and
Mm-hmm.
and customize it for our needs.
Yeah.
And add some
Yeah.
new elements.
And having it over a longer time period might be a good thing as well, because
Yeah, I
then
really
it
think-
gives you time to really get in there and sow those seeds of change, because that was also a thing we were talking about. It takes time to form a habit. And if we're going to teach new behaviors, because changing culture is basically what we're talking about here. And
Yeah.
it's easier said than done.
Much easier.
And, until, like you're saying, reach one home at a time, until we have turned over enough that they start to reach another set. So we do 10, they do another 10, and each of the 10 keep going. Then it eventually has that trickle-down effect across the community now to make that difference, or for us to see the change that we like to see.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I appreciate and I applaud all the efforts that the Gender Affairs have been doing in the short existence. Because how long has this office been around?
Actually, this office has been around for quite some time.
Quite some time?
Quite some time, the office.
Because I know it started as Women's Desk.
Women's Desk, yes.
And then it was renamed because it's not just about women issues, but across the gender.
Right.
But I think you guys have very significant work. So, kudos to you and your team.
Thank you very much. And just so the public would know, we are working also on a national gender policy. Actually, it was completed.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be going before cabinet. And that is another serious piece of material that is going to affect the society, because the researchers or consultants have identified 7 areas where we need a policy intervention to
as far as here locally.
Okay. To bring about gender justice.
Okay.
Okay, some of the things that are covered in the National Gender Policy are a legislation review, or there is policies that need to be implemented where legislation is concerned. One we've already done, that's the Domestic Violence Act, updating that and bringing it up to the standard of the region.
Okay.
But another thing that we need to look at is we don't have a sexual offense bill. So when sexual offenses are done or committed, you have to go to the criminal code.
Okay.
And deal with that, and that's something that needs to be looked at. So the National Gender Policy is there for us to push forward, and I'm eager about that, because I know there are a lot of things that we don't know now, but will come up eventually that will really show the imbalance between the genders. And there's also the CEDAR review, which we did. And CEDAR is the document that actually governs the Office of Gender Affairs. So this document, the legislative review, again, looked at all of our laws that are outdated and things that need to be addressed forthwith. So, and also looking at the articles of the CEDAR Convention and the things that need to be done to be in compliance.
Okay. So is there a timeline as far as compliance, or?
Well, we have.
Or there'll be another follow-up review.
There's a 4-year period where you report, because every 4 years we have to report on all that we're doing to be in compliance.
Okay.
So it gives us that window.
To work on.
To work on these things.
Okay.
Right.
I got you. Ms. Forbes, back to the legal side of it.
Okay.
As far as the act, the thought popped into my mind in terms of was there any education done as far as for the legal community in regards to this legislation? Or is it something that, as they get cases, they will make themselves apprised of it.
I suspect. I mean, there are some of the lawyers, particularly in the bar association, who've been very involved and would know what the legislation sets out. But we're expected that they would read through and test it through the courts.
Okay.
That's what we're expecting. I don't believe that we've yet organized a formal training for the bar association.
Okay. All right. So if someone needs legal aid and they can't afford a lawyer, in a domestic violence case, how is that handled?
You go to FSN, Family Support Network.
Okay.
They actually have a team of lawyers, I believe 1 or 2 lawyers who assist them with bringing cases, and they all work for free, or as we say, pro bono.
Pro bono. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's great. So there's that also as part of the support system. That's a part of what we do. Is there any other support programs you talked about what social development does in terms of with working with the kids, the Partnership for Peace? Is that something that's court ordered, or is it voluntary? How does that work?
The Partnership for Peace is it's usually court ordered, but if someone knows that they have issues with controlling their temper and respecting their mate, they can self-referral, and then we usually write back the courts and let them know that this person wants to attend. So it's still on the books that this person...
that this was done.
Yes.
So they would do that through your office?
Yes.
Okay, and where is your office located and your contact numbers?
It's located upstairs, B&F Medical at Mill Mall, and our numbers there are 468-0017, 468-0017.
Okay. And they will contact you for any other information as well?
Yes.
On any other gender affair?
Any other matter, or even if they want us to come in to do training, because amazingly, for the month, we did like Harney's, Morgan & Morgan, First Caribbean Bank.
And this was on their request?
Their request, Little Dick's Bay Resort in Virgin Gorda, their request. They called in and asked if we could come and inform their staff.
And do a training session, an information session with the staff. Okay. That's great. I have to give kudos to those corporate citizens there taking responsibility. Because it's key. You have a healthy, emotionally healthy, mentally stable, because if your employees have issues going on at home, it's going to affect your job place.
The productivity.
So, and as a company, you don't want to seem like it's just all about the bottom line. But you have to make sure those people who are
brilliant companies.
So I really have to give them kudos for doing something like that. Because I did see, I think it was in the press release, they had a photograph showing you doing a session at Harney's.
Yeah.
So, I was like, well, I don't remember seeing that on the schedule. But
no, they called during the course of the month. But now you're
explaining what happened, that they called and was like, as part of their awareness month, we want you to come in. Okay, and that can happen any time of the year.
That can happen any time of the year.
Okay. All right, that's great. So for those watching, employers, the progressive kind, you can call Gender Affairs and they will come and do an information session to the employees. Not to say that it has to be that they know of a problem that's going on, but again, we're talking about prevention, because we don't want to have situations where persons are hospitalized or worse, dead before we start to take action.
That's true.
Exactly.
And that is very key.
That is true.
That is very key.
And at the end of the day, it's all about productivity for these agencies, because if you address issues that your workers or your employers are having, then it's more productive for your company. So make an investment.
Yeah, and it doesn't just affect one person, but there tends to be a trickle-down effect, because if they're working on a team with persons and, there's absenteeism, or they're there but they're still absent because, mentally there's a lot going on, that's very important.
Exactly.
So I commend that. That's very key. Any other programs that the office does, whether it's domestic violence related? Because, again, I think people hear about gender affairs maybe once a year, so they still aren't too keen exactly what it is that this office does.
The Office of Gender Affairs is there to promote gender equality and equity for both men and women through programs and policy. Now, what took place during the month of October, it's actually a program that we were running just to educate the public. Now, October was the highlight, but like I told you, it started in June. So, and we have activities coming up again in November for the 16 days of activism.
Okay.
Which is activism against gender-based violence. Gender-based violence and domestic violence is two different things. Okay. Domestic violence is in a home setting or a relationship setting. Gender-based violence, on the other hand, is violence against a sex because of their
Because
their
they're
sex
male or
or
female.
female, right?
Okay.
So you being raped or me being raped is gender-based violence because it might be with someone that I don't even know or you don't even know. And those are what constitutes gender-based violence when it's against a sex because of their sex.
Okay. So, and just so we clarify, there's one subtle point, because as you said that now, I thought about something. In terms of domestic violence, in terms of the definition, does it have to be someone that you are in relationship with, or if it's someone that you don't know, but they're stalking you, how is that treated? Is that covered under this piece of legislation, or is that something separate?
Well, actually, stalking is covered in the criminal code. But if it is that you are in a relationship with that person, let's say not even husband and wife, we're just talking dating relationship, and the act gives us a time frame. They say at least 3 months. I don't know why it's specifically 3 months, but if you've been in a relationship, what they call a visiting relationship, so you don't have to live with the person also, I should point that out. You do have a right to protection under the Domestic Violence Act. So I think that is an important thing that we need to let the public know in terms of how far the protection will go.
Okay. And then, so then if it's there wasn't any relationship established, 3 months or nothing, then this is dealt with elsewhere in the criminal code. So
but you're still covered.
You're still covered. Well, we have to know, because then that also too gives people, that sense of security as far as what's in there, what they can expect. If they were to go and file a report, what would be their situation.
I think if I could add there in terms of what to expect, given that we're in a population where the media seems to be constantly reporting of court proceedings, I should specify that it is an offense under the Domestic Violence Act to report any domestic violence proceedings. So persons in media should note this. If you happen to be in the room when domestic violence proceedings are going on, it is an offense and it is punishable with a fine up to $10,000.
Wow. So you're doing an information session for the media?
They need
so
one.
they don't get in trouble?
I mean, in any case, it is a case that you would not expect persons other than the parties interested to be there. And I advise persons, if you go to court and you see that there are even other lawyers there, you can ask the court.
To be clear, essentially.
You ask,
Okay. So there's that privacy.
It is.
And confidential.
That's the way it's supposed to be. It's a family matter.
Okay. So it's been dealt with, And that's important too, because a lot of these cases, in terms of being traumatic, when certain details come out and then it becomes public domain and then it turns into a whole other thing. So it adds on to
You're victimized twice.
It adds on to the strain of it. So I think that's pretty key as far as, we need to respect that privacy and the confidentiality of the matters that we're talking about.
Persons should also know that the Bar Association has donated frequently asked questions pamphlets to the Office of Gender Affairs for the general public, which they paid for, and they took the law since last year when it was assented to. Break it down into these frequently asked questions, and we got it formatted and had it printed. So there are copies available.
So and those can be picked up at your office?
Yes.
Do you have a website?
Unfortunately, not. We need to.
I had to check, because I think too that's another thing that, let's say someone wanted a copy of the act, where would they get one from?
The passport office.
The passport office. All right. So the usual place to purchase
Gazette,
legislation.
actually, no, not at the passport office anymore.
Oh,
the Gazette has moved into the cabinet
Secretary office.
Thank you.
Yes.
You see, that's where I walk with her.
So we have two changes of venues we need to note.
Yes.
So we're not at magistrate court, but we're at the High Court in terms of the protection order request. And for copies of legislations, it's at the Cabinet Secretary office. And that's where the Gazette unit is, you're right, correctly. And that's at the RFG Place building, I think the first floor. So for persons who may go down to the building and be sent up, that's what happened. All right, but again, because I always encourage people, when you hear about certain legislation or certain pieces, whether it's a policy document, white paper, whatever, make yourself knowledgeable of it, especially if you're a stakeholder. And as a citizen of the country, you're a stakeholder. So that includes everybody. That you know what's in it, because a lot of times we run with misinformation, And as a result of that, you know, people take wrongful action, so to speak, on different things because they weren't educated properly in what the, you know, legislation said. So that is very key.
But another way to also obtain a copy is to go online on the Gazette's website.
Okay.
You can just create a username, and you can get a copy online. I tried
Okay,
it today.
to download.
It is available for download on the Gazette website.
Okay.
So just do a Google search, BVI.
The BVI Gazette.
Yep.
Okay. And then you can go from there. All right. Yeah, that's a very important, because all the acts and different policies and stuff that goes through the House of Assembly, they are available through that website. So that's really key. All right, ladies, our hour is almost up. Is there anything else that you would like to put out to our audience? If you just tuned in, you have missed a very excellent and informative discussion talking about the Domestic Violence Act of 2011. With me, I've had Ms. Lorolie Connon, Gender Affairs Coordinator, and Ms. Forbes, Associate at Forbes and Hair, who have been educating us and bringing further awareness, because you know last time we were here we were talking with a panel of folks in terms of what domestic violence is, and now we're getting into the nuts and bolts, so to speak, in terms of what's policies out there, regulations, and those types of things. So as we wrap up, any closing words?
My closing words would be, I would love to commend the New Life Foundation, Family Support Network, Social Development, all the persons that work with persons who are affected. And, you know, it just gives me joy to know that a church-based organization came out to stand up for this cause. Because traditionally, the church would tell women, stay and bear it. It's your cross to bear, you bear it. And you
Without
bear it
support
privately.
behind of it, yeah.
So I'm amazed that there is a church.
So see, there's signs of change right there.
I tell you,
That's
it's
good.
wonderful.
Yes, that's good. I feel that I so well. All right. And your closing words, ma'am?
I just want persons to know that you don't necessarily need to have a lawyer to apply for protection order. You can go in person yourself and apply for the order. It's free of charge and it's open for everyone.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, ladies, thank you for being here in the boardroom tonight talking about this very important issue. And I think that even though we know that there is a challenge ahead in terms of moving the changing the mindsets of the people, that there is hope. And I think if you continue on the great work that you have begun, that, you know, we will have excellent results. So thank you for all that you do, and thanks for being here this evening. You've been tuned in to the Vigilante Dialogues. I am your host, Shaina Smith. If you just tuned in, you completely missed the show. But you can catch us on Sunday at 6 o'clock right here on Channel 51 CBN TV. If you are away or somebody who has satellite, I'm realizing a lot of people have satellite. So you can log on online, www.cbntv.com, and there's a live stream. So while it's broadcast on Thursdays at 9 p.m., you can also catch us again on Sundays at 6 p.m. If you would like to be a guest or a sponsor on a show, feel free to call us here at the studio at 494-7815. You know, give us suggestions as well on topics that you'd like us to talk about here in the boardroom, so that we can continue to formulate a better BVI just by the conversations that we have. So until next time, I am your host, Shaina Smith, saying thank you for being tuned into the boardroom. I'd like to thank our sponsors again, Smith & Associates and Clover's Shoe Store. And let's continue the conversation for a better Virgin Islands.